This summer is now on course to become the country's hottest ever, according to Met Office expectations. Nearly 3/4 of England now experiencing drought, and experts are warning, of course, of the widespread impact this is going to have on farmers, on gardeners, on rivers. Adam Vaughan, the Times environment editor, joins us. Hello, Adam.
Good afternoon.
So we're about to make history by the sound of it. How bad is it?
Oh, I can give you the insider view on that.
Thank you very much. It's nice to hear your trading thoughts this afternoon.
It's it was the driest July in England and Wales on record. We've got 27 million people living under a hosepipe ban at the moment. We've got Southern Water, which has said it would like to go a step further than a hosepipe ban, or a non-essential use ban, which would mean businesses were banned from filling up swimming pools or cleaning vehicles or watering outdoor plants. That would be a major escalation if they do get granted that. That's a big if. The last one of those was granted 20 years ago. So I think that's something that we'll see unfolding in the coming weeks. And as you mentioned, there's a whole bunch of other impacts on farming and so on. Is
there a world, Adam, a sort of an alternative reality where we could be experiencing these weather conditions and cope? If we had been better prepared in decades past, is there a world in which actually this wouldn't feel like so big of a problem?
So I guess the glass half full version of the answer to that is that compared to 1976, which is infamously hot and dry, and we had standpipes in the streets, we don't have that, and as it stands, that currently looks extremely unlikely. So that says something about the resilience of our water supply network, and the fact that, the worst that we might, in a really extreme situation, we might end up with businesses not having been able to wash their cars. That's a fair way from standpipes, right? So that's the positive version. I think that's not to belittle any of it, and clearly, I think we probably will see limits on how much farmers can abstract in places like East Anglia. Could we have done more in the past in terms of building reservoirs? Clearly, yes. The stat that always gets rolled out is that we haven't built a major one since the early 1990s, and that isn't looking like a great look at the moment.
No, not at all. And so the expectation as we sort of embrace this fifth heat wave is the expectation that in years to come, we will simply be calling this summertime, and we will stop reflecting on the significance of it.
Yeah, so something that's really been sort of getting my goat this summer has been people using the phrase "the new normal." I mean, this, we're well beyond that, right? This is just, we've had droughts now. Droughts are not unheard of in this country, but we are getting them seemingly with increasing frequency and intensity. We've had one in 22, one in 2025, now one in 2026, and it's not just the droughts; it's the heat waves, as you've mentioned, which are, they affect sectors like farming and water, and maybe in the future data centres, but they've also been oppressively, record-breakingly hot. I mean, the fact that we had 38 degrees in June was remarkable. I mean, that's an extraordinary number for any month, let alone in June. I think all of this shows how much we're going to have to adapt to climate change and stop talking about it and get on with it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And the adaptations are going to be so wide-reaching. I'm thinking of things that we have got used to in this country, how farms operate, how farmers grow things, what they grow. All of these things are going to have to evolve, and pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think it's really quite profound, actually. I don't think there's like an inertia in our understanding of this, and air conditioning is something that people have focused on a lot, and obviously that is going to be something that more people, circa something like 4 or 5% of people have got it at the moment. Clearly that's going to go up. You mentioned farming. I think longer term people are going to have to take a view on different crops, and are they growing the right things, but those sort of decisions are quite hard to change on a sort of year-to-year basis, right? So I think we're going to need some slightly longer term thinking.
Yeah. Is there any indication as well as to, I suppose, when this will we'll be off the other side of this? What heat wave will be the last heat wave of this summer?
So we're on to the fifth. The Met Office, as you alluded to earlier, was they are expecting it to be, they're saying it's increasingly likely to be the hottest summer in the record, and they say that because if you look at the mean temperature so far this summer, it's already above the record last year, and that was the record year. The longer term 3-month forecast from the Met indicates probably drier than usual until out to October. So it's not looking great, but obviously it's the weather, so let's see.
And it's also, the other part of it is how widespread it is. So yes, it's important to focus on the UK context, but actually Western Europe has had a particularly hot spell as well. And so if you've got a whole sort of big area, big region suffering in the same way, I guess it's difficult for neighbours to look out for neighbours and to help each other out.
Yeah, I mean, two thoughts. One I've realised I've been slightly banding around UK as if it's like uniform across the UK, and to be fair, this is largely an England issue, and particularly a southern one. But on your wider point, I mean, we've had Western Europe had its hottest June and July period on record, and that is having repercussions from, boats not being able to move down major rivers like the Rhine to food production. It's just a few weeks ago that I was reporting about cucumbers being, that we import from Spain and Morocco being out of supply because it just got too hot in those places. So, it's not just Britain.
It's big changes. Adam, it's good to speak to you. Thanks very much. That's Adam Vaughan, who's the Times Environment Editor, and you can read his reporting on thetimes.com and on the Times app with your digital subscription. The easiest way to pull it all up is to search his name, Adam Vaughan, and he'll keep you up to date with the latest forecasts and impact of this latest heatwave period.
The government is introducing new powers for local councils to regulate their high street. Almost 3/4 of England is now officially in drought. This July has been the driest since records began way back in 1836, 190 years ago. And after an unusually hot summer, it's feared the impact on agriculture and water supply could last into the autumn. With water supplies under pressure and many reservoirs beginning to run empty, we've been wondering why it is that no new reservoirs have been built in England since the early 1990s. We think the last major project was in Derbyshire. To explain why, I'm joined by Dr. Kevin Grecksch. He's an Associate Professor of Water Science, Policy and Management at Oxford University. Welcome to the show, Dr. Grecksch.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, you've got a front row seat because obviously there's the Abingdon Reservoir, which they've been trying to get built for 30 years. Why can't we build any reservoirs?
Well, exactly. And actually, the new name is actually now Whitehorse Reservoir. They seem to be changing their name every couple of months. But anyway, it's been a long time, but I would always stress just because we didn't have any, just because we haven't built any reservoirs in 30 years is a good reason to build another one. But it's a long-term planning process. There's public participation, there's public consultation, there's obviously a lot of opposition. And then water companies just focused on other things as well. We just basically sleepwalking into this over the last couple of decades.
And how important are reservoirs for our water supply? How much of our water supply does come from our current crop of reservoirs?
Well, a large part of our water supply comes from reservoirs, and if you go back into history, they play an important part in the industrialization. Take any reservoir in Derbyshire, for example, in the Peak District, etc., where this basically powered industrialization over the decades and centuries. But obviously, we've also built new purpose-built reservoirs for drinking water supply in the 20th century. It's important to stress that it's just one of many options for water supply. So obviously we take water from rivers, we take it from lakes, we take it from groundwater aquifers. So reservoirs are just one of many options. They shouldn't be the only option for our water supply.
I mean, I was the MP for the Abingdon, now the Whitehorse Reservoir, and campaigners who were opposed to it, my constituents, used to talk about water transfers. They thought that you could transfer, for example, water from the River Severn across land to supply water to the southeast. So water transfer is an option?
Well, they sound enticing, but they're incredibly difficult. First of all, it's important to say that lots of water companies do have what you call bulk water transfer. So they do transport untreated raw water to rather short distances. But for example, unlike the electricity grid in the UK, there's no national grid for water. There were plans back in the 60s and early 70s, but the first oil crisis then stopped this basically. The second important aspect of water transfers that you need to take into account is ecological risks. So every river basin has its own distinct ecology. So in terms of what kind of fish species live in there, what other aquatic species, what's the pH of the water? All of these things are different in our rivers. So simply saying, let's transfer some water from the Severn Basin into the Thames, and I've known about these plans as well, of course. You will find ecologists warning against it because you could have invasive species and then potentially destroy a whole ecosystem.
And what about desalination? Do we need to start thinking about that?
Well, it's certainly worth a discussion. I mean, as many maybe listeners know, we actually do have one desalination plant in London, which was built more as a backup. As far as I'm aware, it's never been in kind of like large-scale operation. Some even doubt that it's working at all. And there are two issues with desalination. First of all, the process is very energy intensive. So where do you get that electricity from, and who is going to pay for it? The second thing is, once you at the end of the process, which is called reverse osmosis, so you're basically pushing the salt out of the salty water, you're left with what's called brine. It's a toxic liquid. So what do you do with it? Currently, what I know is it's either directly pumped back into the sea, where some argue, well, it's diluting. I know cases, for example, in Spain, where the brine is mixed with wastewater and then pumped back into the sea. So it's these two major issues with desalination that are very critical.
Brilliant. That was absolutely fascinating, Dr. Kevin Grecksch, the Associate Professor of Water Science, Policy and Management at Oxford University. Thank you for coming on the show.